Kelly,
Brandon.
we are back with
We
the
are.
sound effects from our studio audience. We had a
Love the sound
conversation about
effects.
that.
Yeah.
It took a minute for
We
that.
need to
To
tone them down a little bit. They're great.
Oh, welcome back to the Don't Call Me Karen podcast. So happy to be back here on the deck as we enjoy the last moments of warm or
You know, it's
nice
still
weather.
a nice warm night
It is.
to be in sweaters.
I only got a few mosquito bites.
I know, sorry about that.
It's all good.
You
It's
should
all
have
good.
given me bug spray.
It's all good. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. What is this episode about, Kelly?
So we have a special guest tonight. I'm so excited. We have Leven here that came on this podcast. You're actually our first official guest, Kevin.
Oh my God,
So-
I'm more than honored.
Well, we are honored because you are a local activist and have recently become kind of a national celebrity for your activism. So we're very honored to have you here. But you are the co-leader of the Bucks County Anti-Racism Coalition.
That's
Coalition?
correct. Yes.
Yeah.
I was asked to join that group in June, early June, after everything with Floyd, and everyone knows what happened there. So I was like, okay, so I joined, and then the one person who was leading it at the time saw an influx of members, and she said, "Can you help me?" And I was like, "How can I say no?" Right. So she
Awesome.
asked me to help, kind of direct this group and lead it. And for the first couple of months, it was just us trying to educate people. It wasn't a whole lot. It was,
I joined during that time
You-
too. I
you
became
did,
a member.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I see the great work that you're doing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, it was, as you know, it was a very kind of just slowish, educating people, not a whole lot of discussion. And then something happened recently that,
Yeah. So we will get to that in a few minutes.
yes.
But first, I just wanted to kind of fill our listeners in on our relationship.
Yes.
So just like Brandon and I go way back, you and I go way back.
Way back,
Although
yeah.
you and Brandon just met, which is
Right.
funny because we all grew up in the same area.
Yep.
But Brandon didn't go to our high school. You and I went to the same high school.
That's right.
And many years ago. And I remember the first time I saw you, I was a freshman. You were a senior.
That's right.
And I was in your drama class.
Yep.
And I just thought you were so cool.
Oh,
I just
wow,
really
thank
thought
you.
were awesome.
I thought
Yeah.
you were pretty cool
And
too.
well, not really. We were like these nerdy little ninth graders that were not supposed to be in the drama class. It was like a scheduling blip that we were allowed to be in it. And
You know
I
what?
remember the teacher was very angry about it. Like,
Mr.
how did these ninth
Mr.
graders?
Smith.
Yes.
Yeah,
How did these freshmen get in here?
I actually liked that it was the one class that had the whole range. It had seniors,
Yeah.
juniors, sophomores, freshmen, and we all were in it together.
Well,
and
we were the only year apparently
Yeah.
that did that. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I look forward to that class every day for that reason, because
Yeah.
it was just like, it was like a cross section of the entire
I loved
school.
it too. I was a little intimidated because you're like the lower ninth grader. You're intimidated by the upperclassmen, but I really enjoyed that class, and we didn't know each other well, but I did know that you were in a band, which also like made you so cool, and I knew some of your friends in the band, and so here we are living in a completely different community, well over an hour away from where we grew up, and we are so this is a crazy story. So our oldest children, we're starting them in preschool. So when my oldest daughter started preschool, she was 3, and I'm looking across the classroom the first day, and I see Kevin. And here he is. I mean, he's not someone like you easily forget, especially not in this community. I mean, which we'll get to later.
Right.
It's like a very white community. But like, here's this big black man with his dreads. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I totally went to high school with this guy. And his daughter is in my daughter's preschool class.
Small world.
So, yes.
Yeah.
And they became really close friends. And she's actually here hanging out now
They're-
with
they're-
my
they're
daughter.
chilling right
best
now
friends.
in the-
They're
in-
best friends. They're doing their homework
Oh,
together.
man.
They're best friends. And this is 10 years later. So our families have become really close, and I really appreciate your friendship. And
I appreciate yours too.
I thank you, and I appreciate you being a guest, our first ever guest on our show.
Thank
so,
you. Thank you.
Thank
Really
you guys for
appreciate
the
it.
opportunity. This is great. I love what you're doing. I love how you're doing it. I come here and there are cameras. I did not expect cameras, but we'll
Brandon
go with
is
it.
legit.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
is
No,
real
this
deal.
is serious.
We've got
so
lights. We are, yeah.
Shoot, mate, we would have had his green screen if I could have gotten the button pushing right.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Well,
it's all
He was
good.
setting up, and I'm telling John, my husband, that that I feel like this like movie star that like the crew is like setting up, and I'm just doing nothing, and I'm gonna come out in a minute and have my set. So yeah, thank you for all of that, Brandon.
You're
Always.
welcome. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
All for the people. All for the
Yep.
people.
Yeah. But getting back to part of the reason why we asked you to come on this show tonight. So we live in this community now, which is not where we grew up. And it's a very white community. I listened to one of your interviews where you talked about the actual statistics.
yeah,
of,
it's I believe 94.6% white, 1.5% black, and the rest of the smattering of
that's a
other
minority
stuff
right
in
there.
there. So yeah, it's mostly white.
Yeah.
I also looked up the median incomes,
Mhm.
and as you can imagine, it's well in the six figures for the average income for New Hope, which you go down the river a ways, down near Trenton, and it's in the low five figures.
Right.
So to give you an idea of the stark contrast there, and it's not that far away.
Right. No, not at all.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely quite a homogenous community. Historically very left-leaning and liberal. At least that's our reputation, which I'll get to that later. But that was part of the appeal for us, moving here.
Mm-hmm.
Was that we knew it was, inclusive, queer inclusive, that sort of thing. They have the pride parades and all that stuff. So we thought, some open-minded people out in the suburbs. Okay, some like-minded folks.
Right. With a good school system.
Very good
because
school.
wealthy
Yep.
areas have good school systems.
That's
publicly.
the second reason.
Yeah.
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 Right.
That's why we moved here too.
Yep.
But then an event happened a couple weeks ago that
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
shed some light on some problem for maybe people that didn't know about the problems before. Maybe you've already experienced some of it or known about it, but maybe you want to talk about what happened a little bit.
Yeah, it's something that came to light at a local eatery. There was something on the wall, and do you want me to? How much detail do you want me
spill
to
it.
go in? Okay,
It's up to you.
so
It's
it
all
had,
your
you
choice.
should
This
please
is an
spill it for the
open,
people who don't
casual
know.
dialogue.
for those who
Yeah.
don't already know or haven't already heard about this. It's a restaurant called Fred's, and it's members only. That's their gimmick. You don't really have to be a member to eat there. I've eaten there before I was a member. People, you just wait at the door. The gimmick is you become a member, you pay $20, you submit something for application that's dog themed, and it's a dog themed restaurant. Fred is a dog, right? So, and you get a little key fob that lets you go in the door, skip the line when it's busy, and you're a member. One of the patrons submitted a racist joke as membership, and under the guise of it being about dogs. It was this very same joke got a public official stepped down in 2010 for this joke, which gives you an idea of how bad it is. But it went something to the tune of, my dogs tried to apply for welfare, or I tried to apply my dogs for welfare, and they were denied. But then, here comes the punchline.
So funny.
I told them my dogs were mixed in color, didn't speak English as a first language, were always trying to make me feel guilty for being dogs. They, what was it? They're always asking me for food. So all these really racist, old-time racist tropes that were in this joke. And then all of a sudden they were approved for welfare. And it's like, you have this joke about, a swath of underprivileged peoples, being poked fun at by, wealthy, well-to-do, well-off white people. And it's just...
And apparently it was hanging on the wall for years, right? Which
Years.
it makes me upset because my husband has taken my daughters there, and I have gone a couple times, but it's a tradition that they go there for breakfast for years. But it's a very crowded place with a counter, right, that you sit at, and you kind of wait by the door, and then when you get to go be seated, I never paid attention to the walls. I don't know. I feel bad that I never saw this hanging on the wall if it was there for years.
Don't feel bad. You know what really made me angry when I saw that? The joke wasn't even funny.
It's not a joke. That's why it's not a joke.
But I mean, there have been jokes that have been racist, and I'm like, that's so wrong, but it's also funny because I have that kind of sense of humor. Like I can get the humor out of it, even if it's inappropriate. That joke wasn't even funny. Like there was no point in that thing where I felt guilty for laughing. I'm like, this is like a Dane Cook joke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's where I like. It's like, come on, if you're gonna be racist and offensive, at least be good with it.
Try. At least try.
But that was the pushback, right? It was like, oh, this is just a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't be offended.
It's
And
always a
that
joke.
was crazy from our community.
Yeah.
It was very upsetting and eye-opening.
Yeah, that was there was so much wrong with this, and in part, it was the joke and their response or lack thereof several times over at least 2 years. You know, well, they were aware of it since at least 2018 when one of their Yelp reviewers said, "Hey, your breakfast was great, but get rid of that racist mess on the wall." Wow. Ignored. 2019, 2020, early 2020, same thing. Now it comes to light on social media. It blows up. The person who brought it to their attention was told, you know, you're free to come see if anything else offends you, or you can get over it and have pancakes. And then later, when it got removed,
we're not into these social justice issues. We're into making breakfast. So, like,
and then they were the second time. I don't know if it was hours later or the next day. They said, "Well, I hope everyone's happy." The member who submitted it took it down, and if you don't want to eat here, you're welcome to vote with your feet. And
not really
then
it's not an apology.
And then the apology came the next day when they realized that was a big mistake to kind of double down on that. And that's the one side of it. That apology only came after they realized they were going to lose business. And at that point, I'm sorry, you claim you're not racist. You need to do more than just half-heartedly apologize after the fact. That's one part of it. But like Kelly, like you said, the other part of it is the community. You know, they were complicit in some of these terrible, terrible comments coming from people saying that they wanted to support this restaurant and support this business. And
I saw the comments. I saw the comments. And so this goes back to what was discussed earlier and what we were doing before we rolled tape, right? There's a problem with white America in that they don't understand what racism is.
Exactly.
They really don't. So when they say I'm not being racist, they mean it.
Right.
Like this is not them trying to cover up because they have a white robe hanging in their closet and they know better. No, they really don't understand what racism is. And then when it's pointed out to them, they get defensive because one, being called racist is insulting and it's a horrific title, right? And so rather than try to make up for it, they get defensive, right?
And dig in.
And they
in
dig
this
in.
Case, I mean, it was
all but the most egregious people will dig in. There was one person that said, "Oh, I like being called racist because then I know I've won." When somebody, Anyway, for the most part, most decent people don't want that label, right? So they think that by not, marching in the streets with a hood, that they can avoid it.
Right.
Well,
we talked about that earlier. They're not wearing a hood. They're not lynching someone. They're not using the N-word. So therefore, they're not a racist. And
Correct.
people should just lighten up and take things, easier.
Yep. Yeah.
People of color.
It's easy for them to not see. And some of these supporters, quote unquote, were really trying hard not to see that this was blatantly racist. I mean, I always say that if only the people who were pushing back so hard tried even half as hard to understand our point of view as they're trying to not understand it, so that they can stick to the viewpoints they know and to the life experience that they know, we could make a lot of progress. You know, if
And also, since
Right.
when do white people get to decide what is racism and what is offensive?
right.
That was the problem. It was white people telling people of color how they should feel, and that's a huge problem,
It is
right?
is a huge problem, and the reason is because, in my opinion, it comes down to dehumanization, right? So the same mindset that allows for a not funny racist joke to be perceived as something that should just be let go. You know, it starts with a joke on someone's wall, and it ends with, you know,
A hate
somebody
crime.
being
Yeah.
shot, or you know, a hate crime of some sort where this person isn't fully human. And we're able to laugh at them. We're able to shrug off when they're assaulted. You know, it doesn't. They're separate from us. Therefore, they don't matter as much. Therefore, I don't need to think about it. I need to think about what affects me.
Correct. Yeah. I mean that goes in long. That's a big part of the problem. This idea that if it's not a problem for them, then it's not a problem that really exists at all, and we're just crazy.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's a big thing where we live. I mean, so everyone loves to talk about this New Hope bubble where we live. Like
Mhm.
it's a bubble.
Yeah.
It's this bubble of privilege. And I cringe every time I hear that term because I don't want to raise my kids in a bubble. I don't want to raise them without a sense of, you know, what the rest of the world is like and without a sense of how much they have and
Right.
appreciation for that. But yeah, has this been your experience living here in New Hope? Is this something that has been perpetual and this just brought it to light, or?
You know, it's funny. I think that I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised when I saw people that knew me. You know, some of them knew me well. You know, going to support Fred's, walking by our protest,
Having
and
breakfast
having
there
breakfast
during our
there.
protest,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. People I know,
Digging in.
people I know well, and
Yeah.
who I thought better of, who I thought, you know, would have had my back in a situation like this, and that's kind of a metaphor for the past 4 years for me. I mean, as you know, we grew up in a town that was, you know, it wasn't as white or, well, Wilmington is pretty privileged. North Wilmington
Pretty
is pretty
segregated,
pretty
too.
privileged, but
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
segregated. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the same proportions of race distribution that we talked about earlier. There are definitely a lot more black people in Wilmington because it's a bigger city, right? But definitely very segregated. Even today, it's
Yeah.
still very segregated.
Yes.
So the part of Wilmington that you and I grew up in, Kelly, and going to Mount Pleasant, Brandon,
Yes.
probably you as
I
well.
was in Brandy 100.
Yeah,
I
okay,
would
so
say,
yeah,
He
we
lived
were
in
neighbors.
a nicer neighborhood
Yeah.
than I grew up in. Yeah. And I don't know the neighborhood.
We
very
were Weldon Park.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
So
yeah.
I know Brandy 100s well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was disheartening to see that this many people in my country didn't feel how I thought they felt about people like me, you know?
Right.
And it's disheartening to see people I know well saying that supporting a breakfast spot is more important than, you know, supporting somebody who you've known for a decade, you know?
And that your children are friends with their children.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, all right, I'm gonna play the white devil's advocate here.
The white devil's advocate. All right, what are we gonna get now?
No. Kev, I understand your hurt.
Yeah.
But I think what you can do to help with the hurt in your heart, is to understand that if they thought something was wrong, you were done wrong, they would stand by you.
Yeah.
We saw that with George Floyd.
Sure.
You see, you right.
Agreed.
The problem is they didn't see anything wrong.
Right.
You
No,
know.
here's where I would interject. The people that did see something wrong with George Floyd were the people that were protesting with Kevin and myself,
Right.
not
right.
having breakfast at.
Right, but my point is that this particular situation, it's like the register, right? So if they see the Klan walking down the street in New Hope, they're gonna be like, no, hell no, no, we're gonna fight. Something like that happened. That joke it's just a joke to them. They don't understand the offense, even though you would want them to. Like clearly they don't. So they're not going to fight because they're like, oh, I don't really. I think it falls into that realm of people being overly sensitive. You can't take a joke, not understanding that. Hey, Kevin and people like Kevin are hurt, and because they're hurt, we should take a stand. Because
So how do we fix that? How do we educate?
I wish I knew. You know,
Well,
it's
I mean-
it starts with them listening. You know, that's where it begins. You can't get through to somebody if they're refusing to listen, and that's one of the main thing that we were looking to get out of the protest that we had was a conversation. Just let's start a conversation.
And you were so patient. I just want to say, and I feel the same way about Brandon. Both of you are so patient, and you take the time to try to educate people. And I mean, some pretty ignorant people, actually. And you take the time and you stay patient. And I'm trying to be more like that. I mean, I get really
don't
fired
do
up.
it. No,
Both
you
of you
stay,
know that.
You keep
We
staying
need
fired
you.
up.
We need you to be
It's
angry.
a balance. It's a team effort.
But I mean, it's just, you have dealt with it a million times more than me. And I just admire both of you for how calm you are and how patient, how willing you are to put in the work to educate people that aren't trying to educate themselves.
Right.
So
Right.
kudos to both of you.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate that.
No, but I think the answer is we have to keep doing what we're doing, right? We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep explaining it. We have to, because I think so. The frustration comes with I want to only have to explain it once for you to get it, and then for us to move on, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. But that's not what's happening, because what these people are dealing with is that, like, just imagine if tomorrow you wake up and you're told that living in a nice home and having a family is wrong. It's the devil's work. You shouldn't be living this way, right? All your life you've been taught that, hey, this is the life you should aspire to, and this is the life you should have, and now all of a sudden it's wrong. You would fight against that, right? Because this is how you live. These people are going through the same thing, except with racism, right? All these jokes and things like that. This is their world. Think about, we grew up in the 80s, the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
You know, think about, like, when I watch old sitcoms and some of the things that were said and some of the jokes
And it was
like
okay.
today, and it was
Yeah.
okay. So you have people that have grown up in this world that all these little things were okay, right? Now they're being told, no, it's not okay, right? And they're forced to deal with it. And not everybody's prepared to flip the switch immediately and say, okay, I understand it's wrong and I'm going to reject it. No, they're going to hold on to what they know and what's comfortable for as long as they can until it's too uncomfortable to hold on to it. And then that's what the beauty of what Kev is doing with the piece that he wrote on medium.com and the protests and things like that. We have to keep the pressure on them.
Agreed. And by pressure, you know, it could be getting angry, like Kelly likes to do, or
I don't
is
like
trying
to do
to.
it.
I have a
Trying to
hard
be
time
better.
sometimes, you know, as well. But one of the things that like Brandon was saying is just being present is so important. Like being there, you know, being a black person in a 1.5% black community, and just being visible and letting people know that, hey, this isn't going to stand. I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with how you responded to it. I'm not okay with the fact that you refuse to talk about it and just hope it'll, just
We'll
brush,
walk away, right?
blow away, after everything dies down, then nothing will change. No, that's not how I want things. I'm a minority, but I still have a voice, and I'm going to use it to let you know that what you're doing is not okay. I have no problem doing that. You don't have to get angry to do it, but you do have to be persistent about it. Otherwise, they're not gonna. They're gonna think, oh, okay, well, that was just a temporary thing,
Just
and
a
now,
minute.
yeah, now it's back to life as business as usual.
Yeah, it has to be. It's relentless effort. The changes that occurred over George Floyd was because of how many days in a row in all 50 states and several countries around the world where there were protests. Like, that's the kind of pressure that needs to be applied in order to affect change. You're not change doesn't occur. You can't change most people's hearts, right? It takes power. Power is what causes people to change. This time last year, Black Lives Matter movement was viewed by many as a terrorist organization, blah, blah, blah. This year, corporations are using it as part of their sponsoring efforts. They're putting it everywhere because there's money behind it, because there's power, and that all comes from support. Now, go ahead.
No, and speaking of power, I mean, I think that's why it's so important, and I'm disappointed by this community right now. But it's so important for people that look like me to speak up and to stand up, because we are a system, as we spoke earlier, of like white supremacy, and white people have the power, and that's not okay, but that's what's going to change things. And so I think people don't really know how to be allies sometimes that are white, or don't know how to speak up and use that power to try to make positive change.
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes they're waiting for a catalyst, right? Like I was messaged by, I would say maybe a dozen people as this was all unfolding, saying to me, "I'm so glad you're doing this. You know, I want to help. However I can help. Let me know what I need to do in order to help us along." And it's as if these people were thinking it, but didn't really take that next step and make that move. And when you kind of guide them and let them know that, one, they're not alone, that there are other people who think that way and also might be afraid to take a stand or really voice how they're really feeling in public company or in mixed company, then, it's as if people, I was on a panel last week, and the doctor on that panel, a doctor at Swarthmore College, said people are thirsty. A lot of people are not ready for change, like you said, but there's a whole other segment of people that are thirsty for it and aren't speaking up.
Correct. Yeah.
So how to get them motivated? I asked Brandon this, earlier tonight.
Because I got all the answers. No. You get them motivated by, you got to use groupthink. And if groupthink is what brought the Space Challenger down. One person was like, we shouldn't launch because it's too cold and the rings may fail, and somebody else was like, no, we should launch anyway. And then the room joined in with the person who said we should launch anyway, and then the space shuttle blew up. You also see it in the Trump rallies, right? Somebody yells out something, lock her up or whatever, and then everybody starts chanting.
It's fill that seat.
Yes,
fill that seat, right?
Terrible.
So groupthink. So what we have to do is we have to use those same brainwashing tactics and yell and be loud and be consistent. Consistency beats out everything else. It beats out talent. It beats out intelligence. If you are consistent, you can walk 1,000,000 miles. You can chip away at a mountain. If you're consistent, it'll eventually happen. So with efforts like Kevin's effort and your efforts and the efforts of this podcast and whatnot, we just have to keep talking about it when people don't want to talk about it. We have to be loud sometimes. We have to be soft sometimes. We have to be humorous about it sometimes. Like, you just have to take different approaches. We have to integrate it into our normal everyday lives. The same way all this racist bullshit that happens was slowly introduced and pounded away until it became status quo. We have to do it with this better way of thinking.
And it's uncomfortable. I loved what you said earlier about how it's supposed to be uncomfortable. These conversations are uncomfortable about race. I mean,
right.
It's uncomfortable for so many people, but you have to be uncomfortable to make change.
That's
what leads to change.
It's only uncomfortable for a little bit, because once you get used to talking about it, then you get comfortable with it, because it's no longer fresh or no longer jarring, and you're gonna offend people. You're gonna piss. People are gonna be pissed off. They're gonna be whatnot. They're gonna be angry at you. That's temporary, right? If you have a strong or decent relationship with somebody that you're trying to have that kind of conversation with, they'll get over it. You'll come back together and you'll figure it out. But it has to happen. And the reason why we're here now is because we haven't talked about it. What is it? You don't talk about politics, religion,
right,
and money, right? The people that came up with that crap were the people that were in control of politics, religion, and money. And the reason why they didn't want us talking about it is because if we talked about it, we would figure things out and figure out that they had the advantage and how to take the advantage away from them. So, no, it's got to all be out on the table, and we got to be consistent with it. So that's the answer, Kelly.
Awesome.
He's not wrong.
Thank you,
I
sir.
hear it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. So Kevin, you told me recently some stories that I didn't know about your background, about your parents, and how it just was kind of a natural fit because it's in your blood that you would have become such an activist.
Yeah, it's funny. If you had known me as a kid and teenager like you did, I would have told you I would not have thought of myself that way at all, even in the future, because I was in that bubble. I was in that Wilmington bubble where I thought I would hear
That's a bubble too.
It is a little bit of a bubble. The North
Kind of
Wilmington
stay
bubble.
there, they don't leave. It's like
Yeah, and my parents used to tell us stories about the segregation days and the new Jim Crow the original Jim Crow. My grandparents, and I was always under the impression that it was a straight slope. Like, all right, we were here, and now we've made it up here. And in my generation, we're going to be way up here. And by the time I have kids, it's going to be even further. And I think something happened when I realized that it wasn't the case, that it's a constant struggle. It's a constant push to make progress for every generation until we all finally get there. And I hope that that's happening. But my call to activism came when I realized that wasn't the case. And that was mainly 2016 when I said, oh, this really wasn't the country I thought it was. Mm-hmm. But getting back to your original question, my parents, my mother was the babysitter for the King family, for Dr. King.
Isn't that amazing?
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
we have candid photographs. They were invited to attend banquets with them, SCLC banquets. We have candid photographs of King and Coretta, Sidney Poitier.
Wow.
We have a Christmas card that's handwritten by Coretta to my mom's family. So yeah, it's funny because she didn't want to talk about Rosa Parks was there. Like, my mom knew Rosa Parks.
Wow.
So on that one side, on my mom's side, we had that. So yeah, they it's funny because on Facebook, I love to see, when not so woke white people like to quote King and say,
Oh.
King never would have kneeled for the anthem. And I'm like, well, actually, but they know King or they think they know him, and they like to invoke him as they see fit to prove a point that he would have totally not agreed with. And
I see a lot of religious posts invoking him.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's funny because what they don't remember is that King was kind of a badass. Like, he got in trouble. Like, as John Lewis says, he got in good trouble.
Right.
And he wasn't very well liked back then by a lot of people. He was an instigator and a troublemaker, and he went to jail, for crying out loud. So, I think this, a generation later, a lot of people have this image of him, of this, if only you could be peaceful and like Dr. King. And it's like, well, actually, yeah. So mom knew the Kings. She actually babysat the King children after Coretta learned that he was shot and had to leave. Like, she was there with the children.
Oh.
So yeah, she tells that
that
story
is
to
so
us. She didn't like it. She hadn't liked for it to be publicized until 2017, when I said, can I finally show Facebook these pictures that you've had for 40 years? And she's like, fine. So, but she said every time I would tell people, nobody believed me. So she stopped telling people. Oh yeah, right, sure. And I'm like, Mom, I'm telling people, they don't believe me. And she's like, see? I'm like, Mom, you have pictures. Why don't you give me the pictures? So she finally did. So that's my mom's legacy. My dad was shot by a cop. Luckily, he didn't die because that was, 4 years before I was born. So I wouldn't be here with you if that had gone down differently. But yeah, it's funny. My uncle went to Vietnam. My dad and my uncle used to tell this story all the time. My uncle enlisted in Vietnam and came back without a scratch. My dad stayed home, went to college, and got shot.
It's so sad.
So he the story, the way he tells it, is that he was walking to the library, and there was a riot, think 60s style riot, like late 60s, early 70s riot, right, where
Like
hippies,
a town library?
like,
Or like
oh,
a
the
college
campus,
library?
the campus
Campus
library. Yep. So think late 60s, upside down cars on fire, like that
Right.
type of thing.
Right.
So he's walking to the library, and the officer was chasing somebody else. And I guess he had rounded the corner just in time for the officer shot 4 clips. He said the first one missed completely. Clip number 2 pierced his calf, went right through his calf. Clip number 3 hit the suspect at the nape of his neck. He died instantly.
Wow.
And clip number 4 missed. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
So what he said was that had that officer's aim been just a little bit off, then that third bullet could have killed him.
Yeah.
So he still has the scar, and he'll show me the scar of when, I was actually thinking of possibly getting a tattoo of that scar to honor him. But yeah, it has an entry wound and an exit wound. So when I hear about, what's been going on and what's been going on since forever, but recently filmed in this country regarding police interactions with people of color, that really
And even the protests, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It really kind of hits really close to home for me.
Sure.
And as a result, I've been told this story my whole life, so I was naturally apprehensive around cops anyway from a young age. When we were at the protest last week outside of Fred's and the landing, the police there were very cooperative, but approaching them, I felt a little afraid, even though I knew small town, there's 3 of them there, they're friendly,
Right.
It's just something about it, and that's something that I have to work on, to the extent that it would
But it
help me
makes
to not
sense.
be. Yeah,
I mean,
it
it
makes
makes
perfect
sense.
sense, but it's, we talk about people who have these gut reactions to things, and that's mine,
Right.
you know?
But you might also be apprehensive even not having that family background, right? I mean,
Sure.
it hits home with me as a parent so hard, and Brandon and I have talked about this before. But like the epitome of white privilege to me is being a parent that doesn't have to talk to my children about once they get their driver's licenses, about
Right.
how they should act if they get pulled over
Yeah.
to protect their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even something that I have to deal with. So
You
Um,
might now because you're an activist family. You know what I mean? They be like, hey, them
Well, and
Kelly's
I
daughters.
I had an encounter of my own, unfortunately, with the police that was really scary from a potential assault perspective when I was in high school.
Oh
But,
man, yeah, I've heard stories like
but
that.
it wasn't anything like what people of color.
It's
so.
it's funny. It's the talk, right? That black families and Latinx families have to have with their kids about interactions with the police. And it's funny. I was visiting a friend of mine in San Francisco last year, and she said to me that I could borrow their car while I was visiting them if I wanted to, go around while they were at work or whatever. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to drive any car that is not registered to me.
Wow.
And
that
she
would,
said,
again,
I
never be my
I
problem.
didn't
Like,
even think of that. It didn't even cross my mind. So yeah, she's like, I get it, but wow,
Yeah.
what privilege I have that I can borrow somebody's car without
Indeed.
fear, So yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, this is the world we live in, but it's also changing, and we have everyone's attention, right?
Mm.
We have this opportunity. This is like a golden opportunity. George Floyd literally changed the world. He literally changed the world.
It's I'm still kind of taking that in, to be honest. Like, it's just like, wow, to see other countries get on board was, I gotta say, I never thought I'd see anything like that.
I saw in another interview that you did last week, and the question was asked, is this like a movement or a minute? And I really liked your response to that. So can you share that
I
with
can.
us?
What I said at the time, it's funny, I was thinking about this yesterday. What I said at the time was, I think it is a movement, especially now. But I think that within that movement, you have several moments or minutes that basically goes back to what I was saying earlier. We need to keep pushing, and I don't think it's going to happen in in our generation. But I think that future generations are going to look back on this as hopefully as a turning point. And I hope that it happens sooner. That's what I said then. But what I'm thinking about now is that a movement is a mindset, right? That's what defines a movement, is a steadfast mindset toward a common goal, right? The moment is an opportunity to put that mindset into action. And that's what I wish I had said last week.
Well said. Wow, you said it now.
We're gonna cheer you on. We're gonna cheer you up, man.
Our podcast.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
beautiful. No, it is absolutely a movement. So the difference between Eric Gardner, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, and the countless number
Too
of
many.
other people who have had their murders on video, so more or less, and George Floyd's, is that we got to see George Floyd, the whole story. We got to see, and we knew what the reason was. So the reason was petty as hell, right?
Sure.
Because no one calls the police over counterfeit bills.
Right.
You take the bill and you submit it to the Secret Service, right? We saw him getting beat up in the car. Like the world. So there was no opportunity for anyone of halfway sound mind and body to be able to point out a reason why George Floyd deserved any of what he got. And because of that transparent, clear, cut and dry video, that's what woke people up to say, okay, we get it now.
Yeah, video has been a game changer.
Certainly.
That particular video. And so now there's room to look back at Eric Garner's video, at these other videos, and be like, yeah, that's jacked up. Like, because now we know there are cops that are on the force that are doing these things. And as we were talking about before, most people aren't racist. They do racist things and they say racist things because they don't understand that they're being racist, because the only racism that registers to them is the extreme KKK, lynching, racial slurs and whatnot. Right. Now they see it. You can't unsee it. You can't put the tube back in the toothpaste. So this is a movement. This is a permanent elevation in our trajectory in terms of equality.
I agree. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what we have to do to keep it to benefit what we have to do is we have to be louder than the minority. They love to call it the silent majority, right? But it's really the loud minority, right?
Sure.
The Trump supporters, this 1/3 of the population that are just deplorable, as Hillary said, that they don't have large numbers, but they're just loud as hell. And the average person doesn't want no smoke with people that are unreasonable and loud. They just, it's just like, I'm just going to shut up. I'm just going to go away. I'm just going to ignore them. We can't do that.
No, and that's so much of my goal with this podcast and just with everything we're doing, is to just get more of the silent people that really agree with us and feel the same way that we do, to feel comfortable enough to speak up and take a stand, because it's not going to change unless they do. I mean,
and it carries more weight coming from someone who looks like you do.
It does.
Unfortunately, you will be listened to, and you will be able to see it in places we can't.
Right.
You know, and so for you to be able to, have the wherewithal to come forward and to do something like this and put it out there, is huge to me. You know, one of the things we talked about on the previous interview from last week was allyship. And, you know, that's what we need here now. That's what the whole coalition that I was asked to help lead is about getting people on board. You know, if they're not quite as on board as we'd like them to be, we want to educate them, you know, and get them to see where their blind spots might be, or learn where ours might be. You know, it's a group effort.
Oh,
It takes
I'm
a village.
totally learning and learned so much from both of you.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think probably what a productive next step to be is to actually figure out tangible things that people can do in terms of being an ally, right? Because it like saying, oh, you need to be an ally is a pretty general thing. It's like, yeah, build a house. Well, damn, how do I start? What do I start with, right? You know, so
Good analogy.
you know, so you have to say, well, first you got to pick out the land, right?
Yep.
And then after you pick out the land, then you're gonna do a foundation. Do you want a basement or do you want a platform? You know, like if you know, and go step by step. So okay, we want you to be an ally, but now we have to start saying, well, look. When you're an ally and you're at the dinner party with your other white friends and they start saying some inappropriate crap and you know it's inappropriate, that's the opportunity to say something.
Sure.
You know.
Yep.
You know, hey, maybe you can donate to these organizations. Hey,
Or
maybe
read this book.
read
or
this
listen
book.
to this podcast.
Or, you know, if there's a black-owned business that you can support the
You know what?
black-owned business.
We have one here. I found
in New Hope?
Yeah, I
No.
found.
What?
So
I don't even know about this business.
no,
so
it's
thank you.
it's really good because at the protest they came out and they handed me business cards.
Wait, what? I
Yeah.
missed this.
So it's a candle making shop right in the center of town, 15
Come
15
on,
Main,
Kevin.
15 Main Street.
Okay. 15 Main Street, people.
15
Okay.
North Main. It's I forget the name of it, but you go there.
It was near where we were standing?
Yeah, it was like right across the street and down like half a block.
Okay.
And it's a business where you go and you make your own scented
okay,
candles.
You know
yeah,
what?
it's
I
like
have seen that.
yeah,
Some
it's like a
people
candle
posting
making
that they've
studio.
been there on social media, but I did not know it was black.
you know what? I plan to go there because the last power outage we had, I was thinking I really need some new candles. I don't know.
You should take the girls. They would
I
like, love
definitely,
that.
definitely. I plan to do
Playdate
it
for
as soon as I
teens.
can. But yeah, they handed out business cards. So I'm like, yes, we've got one. We've got a black-owned business in New York.
Nice.
I'm trying to look it up right now because I want to give the name.
I wish I had
to
brought the
15
card. It's
Wax and Scent Studios.
That's it. Yep.
All right, people. Wax and Scent Studios, 15 North Main Street, New Hope, PA. Let's see that they don't. Well, I can't find the website, but maybe they have the website. But Colleen McAllister said, "Great place, very warm and cozy. The owners are the best." This was 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
so let's support. But
Let's do it.
but seriously, and I mean that support. But in terms of allyship, spending money at black establishments whenever possible to help grow, because this is one of the challenges that we have, black people, in terms of entrepreneurship. We don't necessarily get the support that we're looking for. I mean, like, this podcast is funny to me, right? So I have my podcast, the End Podcast, right? And I have subscribers, and it's growing or whatever, but it's very, very low, right? I get with the white chick.
A loud white chick. That's why.
I get with the white chick, right? And I look on the stats, and it's like, oh, you got 65 subscribers.
So I didn't even know that. I don't even pay attention to
But
that.
I haven't
so
shared it with you, but you know,
Power of white chicks.
right? But you know, and on Facebook, all these people are commenting. They're like, "Oh, I'm so excited for you," and all these likes and things like
yeah,
that.
we did get a lot of love on Facebook.
Right, but you know, when it's just the black guy, right?
Yeah,
You know, with
yeah.
my
Yeah.
so, but that's the difference. I mean, that's just a difference of, you know, culture.
Sure.
And one of the things with white allies, you know, when you have your white privilege, using that to help uplift
yeah.
like-minded black people, and vice versa.
So
So
important.
thank you, Kelly.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes. Thank
Clap
you.
it up
And
for
thank you
yeah.
so much, Kevin. This is really great conversation.
Yes, I was. Yeah,
Kev, we should have you back, man. I don't
I
know.
would. I would. I would love to come back. I
We
would love
wanna
to come
know the
back. But
outcome of all of-
under one condition. You get that green screen working, and I will come.
And get rid of the mosquitoes.
Right. No.
Oh, pandemic podcast.
Oh yeah, people. I had a green screen that I couldn't get my switcher. I didn't have enough time.
Well, forgive him this time, everybody.
Yeah, no. So will you be doing more writing for? Or what's
Yeah,
gonna happen
I
here?
will write again. The first article I wrote in June was pretty well received, and I was, you know how it goes. The creative process goes when you do something and it's more successful than you thought. You're like, oh well, how am I gonna top that? What am I gonna follow that with?
Right.
And I thought about it all summer. I was like, what am I gonna write? I thought about. I was thinking about writing something on Bacon's Rebellion because that was where race started in this country. Like you trace it back to the root, and that's pretty much it. It goes back to class warfare. I'm lucky enough that I was able to link to an article about that,
I saw that.
in my most recent article because it's got the breakfast theme going with the bacon. But I as I was saying to Kelly earlier, I don't think of myself as a writer per se.
You are, though. You're such a talented writer.
I think when I have something to say, I just need to get it out.
Yeah.
And whatever medium that happens to be, like I do music and art and all kinds of, I'm an expressive person. So if I have thoughts, I organize them and I just want to get it out there. The whole Floyd thing just made me want to get stuff off my chest. And it happened again last week or 2 weeks ago with the Fred's thing.
And where can people find it's on Medium, right? Is that
Yeah,
where
you can search Kevin 11,
Okay.
all spelled out, KEVINELEVEN on Medium, and
well
you'll find
worth
me.
the reads.
Yeah. No. You. So based on what you described, it sounds like you're a writer, right? Because I mean, writers
Sure.
they write when they have something to say.
Yeah,
Like,
I think of myself as more a person who writes than a writer, and I guess I don't know what the difference is there, but sure, so it'll happen again, I'm sure. Like, because I don't think this will be the last time I'll be inspired to say something.
No, the more you do it, the easier it gets. You just have to because I've been writing more and I have stuff queued up that I need to edit and stuff. for my
Where can
Medium.
we find your
It's
stuff?
going to be on Medium. At Medium, it's the N podcast. I think it's the
Nice.
N podcast page or whatever. I'm linking it
Okay.
to my podcast.
Okay.
The N podcast. But now I make it a point, like when I'm working, if I get an idea, I stop working. I pull out my iPad. Or I do my voice to text and I get it out, and just because it's really easy to have those thoughts,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
then like I'll do it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the
that
fire's going later.
never works ever.
No,
Yeah.
it does not. So, so we encourage you guys to please check out Kevin 11's Medium page.
And our podcast. Please subscribe.
Share the podcast.
I'm definitely subscribing to your podcast.
Awesome.
And if you like Kevin, and comment, and then we'll see if we can wrangle him in on a regular basis. We'll see if we can get him to be a part
That
of
would
this.
be awesome.
I would love that.
No, we'd love. I love your energy, and appreciate your efforts and whatnot. So, and you're like black royalty, man. Like 6 degrees of separation from Martin Luther King, right? Jr. So, but we're gonna wrap it up, right? Do we or do
Sure.
you? Oh, we
Yeah, I
already
think
did that
it's-
question. Yeah, it's
yeah.
late, man. We've been burning. The mosquitoes have left us alone, so I guess they went to bed. So it's time for us to go to bed. So, guys,
I
thank you.
see you like scratching. I feel
Yeah,
so bad.
look here, right before we end this,
I thought they were done for the season.
Listen,
in my
Kelly,
defense.
Kelly.
Someone
look,
tell them it's fall now.
I know.
Kelly. I was just bragging to my mom like 3 weeks ago. I'm like, you know what? I haven't got bit by a single mosquito
You're
all
gonna have
summer,
100
right?
when you go.
They heard
And
you.
They heard me. She had little did I know she had a damn mosquito farm in her front yard. She had these planters with water, standing water, and I'm talking.
Oh.
And I got like bit 6 or 7 times. Then a mosquito was in my room and was gnawing on me all night. I woke up. Yo,
They're like, hey, we got to get this guy. He hasn't been bit all summer. That's
yeah,
the
I
guy.
shouldn't have said anything. So I'm used to it now. So it's
All right.
all good. But yeah, please guys, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Please comment, share, like.
Where can they subscribe?
Your favorite podcast outlet. So we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we are on I think Amazon
YouTube.
now. So you can watch the video on YouTube if you're listening. If you're watching, you can listen to it on the thing. But you want to see Kelly's pretty face. So why would you deprive yourself of that that opportunity? But yeah, the metrics matter. So I mean, it's great that you watch, but it's even better when you when you interact with the post. And we're on social media. We'll put that in the comments or whatever. So I can't remember what it is. We're still working that out. Like, what is it? DCMK podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. But we're gonna go because we're just rambling at this point in time. Kevin, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
No,
It
it
was
was our
awesome.
pleasure,
Thank
man.
you.
Really, seriously. Let me clap it up for you. All right, guys. Until the next one. Thank you. It's the Don't Call Me Karen podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.